Thank you to our speakers and the folks that have entered questions into the chat. As Jen mentioned, we will have 15 minutes for this time period, and we'll start with this one question for Dan from Brad Jolliffe. Let me actually open this up so I can read the whole thing. Dan, great talk. Do you consider the mineralogy and composition around Apollo Basin to indicate that the Apollo Basin impact struck outside of the SPA transient cavity? Also, was the eastern side of the SPA compositional crescent perhaps affected by ejecta from Orientale?
Yeah, those are two good points. Thank you, Brad. So when we look at the mineralogy of, one, like the kind of interior inner ring of Apollo, and then some of the outer rim massifs, they're all mostly pretty feldspathic. You do have some norites creeping in there, but a lot of the kind of major components of that basin structure are all mostly feldspathic. Whether it's impacting into pre-existing crust outside of the SPA transient cavity or crust that kind of collapsed back into the transient cavity, I think it's hard to tell from orbit, at least from a compositional sense. I mean, Jeff might have some insight into that actually. But so one of the important things we do see is that Apollo itself is a local minimum in thorium. And so if the source of this thorium-bearing material is the SPA ejecta blanket, it suggests that Apollo was big enough to locally remove it. And in terms of the question about Oriental, we are outside of the kind of proximal ejecta zone for Oriental, but certainly Oriental ejecta would be a major component of the regolith in this region. So that certainly could be one of the reasons why the kind of surface expression of the iron and thorium and clinopyroxene bearing material is lower on the eastern side of SPA than on the west.
Thanks, Dan. Okay, this next question is from Anonymous for Dr. Curran, as indicated in the question. The constraints you showed for the age of SPA don't seem to overlap or converge. Can you talk about why they are different and how they might be resolvable?
Yeah, of course. So I guess the thing is when it's comparing several different techniques and what they're outputting. Some of them for the modeling, they're looking at solar system wide dynamics and trying to project them onto the moon. Crater counting is taking information that we have from mostly from near side samples and projecting them to the wider moon as well. And then we have like the direct samples that are collected from within one of a larger basin within SPA as well. And then we have lunar meteorites. So they're all vastly different techniques of trying to get an indirect or direct age. And I think the best way that we can go about resolving the question of SPA age is from returning samples from a bunch of different places across SPA to try and resolve these larger basins and also resolve the age of SPA. I think so. I'm a sample analysis person, so of course I'm going to say samples, but samples are definitely the key to kind of getting at this question and resolving this issue.
Okay, thank you very much. One next question is from Brad for Jeff. Where would you place the SPA transient cavity?
Yeah, good question. And I think geophysics has a lot to say with it. I'm cautious with the term transient cavity because it is transient. Think about things in a Lagrangian sense. Where it was at one moment in time isn't where it is at the next moment in time because the material is moving so much. But I would think more in terms of excavation cavity, where the crust has been excavated and removed. And the one thing that I think the gravity shows us very clearly is that this dense mantle-bearing ejecta unit extends far into the basin interior inside the basin rim. And that's a very good thing, because one puzzling thing, if you look at some models of SPA formation, they predict a 20-kilometer or more thick ejecta blanket outside the basin rim, which is absolutely not there. The reason it's not there is because that thickest ejecta collapsed into the basin interior. And so if you go back to the figures in my slides, or I put it in my abstract as well, there's a line denoting that peak ring that we're interpreting. That's basically the inner edge of the collapsed ejecta blanket. And that's where material that was excavated and part of the ejecta collapsed inwards. What you can do, and Gabe has done some work on that, is basically just bulldoze that material back in a geophysical sense, in a numerical sense, to reconstruct what SPA would have looked like before the collapse of that ejecta. And it brings it, close to, but not all the way to, the present day topographic rim.
Thanks, Dan. I think that's a great point about the collapse of the rim, and something that maybe we don't think enough about. You probably do, but I certainly will think more about it.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. So we've got almost 9 minutes left. Are there any other questions from our attendees or the other speakers from today?
Looks like a couple just came in.
Okay. Okay, the last one I see is Brad's. That I just asked.
You should be able to see them now.
There we go. Thank you very much. All right, great. Okay. One moment. I'm sorry, my son is off. Okay, so we have a question from Don Barker, who asks, how will the knowledge from the locations directly enable the establishment of a long-term permanent human infrastructure? I will open that up to anyone who's spoken earlier today who might have an answer for that.
Well, I could just give a quick start while people are thinking about it. I think the Artemis 3 mission and what we find will have a lot to say about how sort of homogeneous or localized or heterogeneous a given landing site at the South Circumpolar region might be. And so I think we're going to learn an awful lot from Artemis 3, and that may set the stage.
Thanks, Brad, for starting us off. Any other folks who might have comments about this question? Okay, let's move on to the question for Jeff from Tab. Great. Oops. There's more over here. Great talk. Wanting to just add to the discussion, since I won't be able to join the geophysics breakout, another observation to help constrain the potential for global scale mantle convection induced by SPA. The same mantle convection process, whether driven by SPA or simply gravitational instabilities between ilmenite-bearing cumulates and underlying mantle, would result in global scale pressure release or decompression melting of those lower mantle cumulates. This partial melting process of the lower mantle would give rise to the magnesium sweet magmatism at this time, consistent with geochronology of meteorite and Apollo samples of magnesium sweet, and also our global observations of candidate magnesium sweet exposures from orbital remote sensing data. I know that was a lot, Jeff. It's in the Q&A, so you can skim it there if you need to refresh yourself on it. But do you have a comment for us?
Yeah, I think it's a very good point. And I think one thing that I love about SPA and about the moon in general is how linked everything is. That, when we're talking about SPA, we're also talking about mantle dynamics. We're talking about MG sweet magmatism. I mean, how often we're talking about SPA do we bring up PKT on the exact opposite side of the moon? And I think the other thing that I think is really great in SPA as well as lunar science, in my geophysics talk, I have to keep showing elemental abundance maps, and everything is so linked. There is not geophysics and geochemistry and geology as these separate isolated fields. And I think in order to understand SPA, we're really going to have to take this holistic view of it. I think this is where more geodynamic models to understand the timing of things. An age of SPA will be great, but what is the time lag between that impact and when we start seeing its geodynamic consequences elsewhere on the moon?
Thank you very
I agree
much.
with Jeff, and just a comment back to Don's comment. It's, we may be able to learn a lot more with some robotic additions to the human exploration. So, we put a landing site and an outpost in one location, but then we may be able to explore to other terrains, as with, for example, the Endurance mission concept. So, getting into the interior of the basin, and, Jeff and Dan really pointed this out well, is also key.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you both. Okay, another question for Jeff or comment from Kaz and Isley. Totally agree that SPA is southward trajectory based on its current morphology. For the estimated size of the SPA impactor and basin size, the impactor had to be moving incredibly slowly. When SPA formed, the moon was closer to Earth and had a much faster orbit and therefore faster rotation. I think it gets as fast as 24 hours, assuming synchronous orbit. Could the moon's faster rotation have altered the shape of the basin and or the ejecta? Could lunar rotation be a confounding factor in crater morphology and ejecta placement? Or are the cratering processes too fast for that to matter?
Yeah, but interesting question. It's something I've thought about, but I've never done the calculations, is how much you could displace an ejecta blanket on a more quickly rotating body. I suspect it won't fundamentally change things, but I haven't actually done that calculation. A big question would be what the age of SPA is, because from an initial very close orbit near the Roche limit, it'll evolve pretty quickly in those early phases. And so depending on the actual age of SPA, that will have big implications for its rotation rate. And the question about the impact velocity is an interesting one. These very elongated impact basins are much easier to form in lower velocity impacts than in higher velocity impacts. And it has to do with the expansion of the crater from the footprint of the projectile. One thing that I didn't talk about is that there's a bit of a mismatch in what we see and what we model, where the largest impact basins in the solar system are highly elongated, typically 1.2 to 1.4 aspect ratios. And those very elongated basins are difficult to produce in models. And I think models typically max out at aspect ratios of 1.2. So I think this is a challenge for future modeling work to try to work out.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you very much. I think we'll end the Q&A there so we can hear about how we are dispersing to the breakout rooms.